Episode 41, Half-Truth. Evelyn nodded as she rubbed her palms against the back of her jeans. Now everything has come to this. While she would not lie, she wouldn't give him the full truth. I went to deliver their meal that day when I saw their model was having a problem. That's when they discovered me. She paused for a while. You know how clock's my favorite brand, right? I refused at first, but when they offered me the opportunity to meet the designer, I couldn't say no. His eyes gleamed. Really? You aren't lying to me? Of course not. Then did you meet the designer? Yes. A woman? She stayed silent before she answered. No, he's a man. What? Looking as if he had just been electrocuted, Mark jumped up in the air. His eyes were narrowed as his arms flailed in different directions. Do you like him then? Her mouth twitched as she gazed at his red face. Why would you think that? He didn't look the slightest bit amused by her reaction. He's the designer you admire, right? And he's a man. You aren't interested in him, are you? Sure, he's talented, but you don't know what's going on in his mind. He could be a jerk for all you know. All right. Before going any further, Evelyn quickly interrupted. You're thinking too much. I like his designs, sure, but he doesn't have the best personality. I hate the guy, okay? The dark look in Mark's eyes immediately dissipated and he blinked. Really? He asked hesitantly. Really, she nodded. Fortunately, she spoke the truth this time around, so there wasn't any guilt stirring in her chest. Upon gazing at her for a while, he managed to sigh in relief. He sat down on the floor and leaned against his legs. You must be pretty annoyed that I keep meddling in your affairs, he murmured. His soft hair brushed against her as his voice carried a trace of childlike innocence. Her heart immediately softened. No matter how old he got, he was still her little brother. She reached out her hand to ruffle the sides of his hair. It doesn't matter how meddlesome you are. I know you're just looking out for me, she said simply, and I love you for that. Then, there was a small pause. Can I make one more request? Since he was resting his head on her legs, Evelyn could only see the back of his head and hear his soft voice. His scheming eyes remained hidden from her sight. She smiled. Of course. You shouldn't continue in the modeling industry, okay? Even if someone comes looking for you, you shouldn't model for them, he stated firmly. You know how dangerous the entertainment industry can be. I'm just worried, that's all. I promise, she shrugged. After all, I want to live a quiet, ordinary life. We haven't hung out together for a long time. There's a fair going on nearby. Do you want to go? Yeah, we can call Cindy. It's been a while since we all went somewhere. No, let it just be the two of us. Mark suddenly sat up as he grabbed hold of her slender hands. I'm still angry about what happened, so please take 2 days off. 2 days, and I'll forgive you. His brown eyes reflected the sun's golden rays and defined cheekbones, and a strong jawline had replaced his somewhat childish features. Any girl who'd gaze at him would fall limp in his arms. Even if he was her brother, she couldn't help but sigh. He had always been so pretty, and now he was even more handsome. He'd likely be a good husband in the future for any girl he fell in love with. He had the glow of youth and the domineering maturity of a man. An uncomfortable feeling rose inside her as she pulled her hand away. Fine, I'll go with you, she said helplessly. But it's pretty rare for you to get days off like this. Wouldn't it be better to go hang out with your friends? No need. Being with you is enough. With a smile, he finally stood up. I'll take a shower now. It's almost noon, so I should be heading for my afternoon shift. I'll cook for you first, all right? Evelyn stood up and went to the kitchen to fix something. When Mark closed the door behind him, he couldn't help but gaze at his hands. His cheeks were slightly red. So soft. His heart would still skip a beat every time his fingers grazed her skin. When their time came, he'd hold her hand and dress her up to be even more beautiful than those advertisements she'd seen on TV. That way, she could only be seen by him alone. Damn it. His eyes turned cold at the thought of her being gazed upon by hundreds of men. Jealousy reared its ugly head as he clenched his fists. He had hidden her beauty so well, but that damn company had dug it out. Fuck them all. He groaned, placing his hands over his face. He knew there was something wrong with him, that his possession was terrifying. But every time he stared at her, that feeling inside of him grew even worse. He wanted her and her alone, And just the thought of her being taken away by some other man. No, that couldn't be allowed. They had always been together. It had always been like that in the past, in the present, and soon enough it would be like that in the future. He gritted his teeth. He wouldn't let her be taken from him. He had been through many things that she would never need to know about. Who would have thought that such a happy-go-lucky person could hide so much sadness and darkness in his heart? He took a deep breath. The only thing he could do was prevent other people from approaching her, to stop her from falling in love with others. While he was happy that he was connected with her, the mere title of being her younger brother made it almost impossible for him to crawl out of his shell. He sighed. While he wanted to protect her as a younger brother, he wanted to love her as someone more than that. They weren't actually related, but he had to continue to hide his identity for now. He slammed his fist against the mattress in frustration at the unfairness of it all. He needed to wait a little longer until he was fully grown. That day, he'd finally tell her the truth. The doctor had made a house call as Timothy gazed up at the man with anticipation. A gentle smile crossed his features. "You're doing well. In fact, as long as you don't do any strenuous activities, you should be fine for the next 3 months." He pursed his lips. "But I would still need to do a follow-up examination. If you faint again, I'll have to insist on performing the surgery on you." He slowly sat up and smiled at the doctor. "I understand, Dr. Larson. I know this surgery is my best option, but I don't think this is the right time." "I know that, but as your doctor," Dr. Larson sighed, "you can't drag this on any longer, you know." "I know." Even then, he was still smiling. Pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, the doctor glanced away. "Did you see the billboard yesterday? The models just keep getting better and better. The Cage Group knows how to pick new faces for its brands. She's so pure and beautiful. You should find a woman like that." Timothy stared at the window. "Yes, she is pure and beautiful." The man simply smiled in response. Of course he had seen the advertisement. There was just something so beautifully intricate about the woman that nobody could find it in themselves to look away. Even when she had makeup on, he still recognized her face at first glance. She looked the same as she had back when they were kids. Evelyn had always been charming. With her beautiful smile and pure innocence, she was like the flower put behind glass walls. While everyone could look, she was a treasure none of them could ever dream of touching. He had always wished for a woman such as that for himself. It was a pity that the woman he loved had already moved on. Harvey must have ordered the change of models. The man knew just how beautiful she was and how much potential she had. Even her expression at the last scene of the commercial was enough to make any man take a second look. She had always followed him in the past. Now, he had no right to chase her. The smile on his face turned wistful. Timothy could only wish that she was happy with Harvey. Just the thought of her bright smile and glistening eyes was enough to blur his vision. A part of him wished they could just go back in time to when they were kids. Maybe then he'd have her only focus on him and no one else. Maybe then he'd be able to hear her soft promises that she'd only be his and nobody else's. He had always loved Evelyn deeply. He only wished that he could have told her that. If he did, would their situation be any different? Ha! Timothy chuckled as he gazed out at the window. Even then, he still didn't regret it. At least the man standing beside her was healthy and good, not someone sickly and weak. It was enough to give him some peace of mind. While he was mourning over lost love, Evelyn was musing pensively over her situation. "Are you not going to consider debuting?" In the restaurant La Grenouille, Harvey sat by the window. He crossed his arms and stared at the woman sitting opposite him. She glared at him in reply. He had come a little bit late, during the hours when the restaurant wasn't bustling with guests. Many servers were waiting to take his order, yet her manager decided to assign her to this bastard. What the hell was his problem? "I swear I'll increase your monthly bonus," Mike repeatedly said as he pushed her towards Harvey's seat. She still cursed the restaurant 100 times before she followed. "Thank you for asking my colleagues not to spread the news." She finally raised her head. "I never intended to be a model anyway, and I still don't think any differently." Harvey shook his head in disappointment. "Aren't you poor? Don't you still have a brother to take care of? Being a model could make lots of money, and your first layout is a hit." He tilted his head. "Not everyone is as lucky as you." "Poor?" Did he think she was that desperate for money? Despite this, Evelyn still plastered a smile on her face. I may look poor to you, but I'm doing fine on my own. She raised her eyebrow. I don't need your help. Being a model would have been profitable, but knowing Evelyn, she wouldn't agree to such a lucrative profession. Plus, she was just too shy. If she were assigned to model in a swimsuit, she would have probably died from the embarrassment. It just wouldn't do for her. You're stubborn, aren't you? Her mouth twitched. It's what I want. You are good at not knowing what's good for you. Harvey snorted, scoffing at her words. You can get everything you want by just staying by my side. Yet you reject me with every chance you get. You're the most ungrateful woman I've ever known. Evelyn rolled her eyes. Yes, I don't know what's good for me. I'm still not going to change my mind, she retorted. No matter how powerful the person is, just kindly turn them down for me, okay? I won't debut as a model. Well, someone did invite you just a few hours ago. Alex said that you'd given him some inspiration to start his new project. He changed the topic. I know you hate him, but you could also learn a lot from him. So I agreed to the meeting. Evelyn almost jumped up from her seat. Alex, he wanted to meet her. That means I could see him design those clothes with my own eyes. Evelyn immediately jumped from her seat. She wasn't going to stick to her guns as she had declared. I want to see him. Harvey couldn't help but smile. Something about her excitement amused him. I'll let you see him, he said calmly. He'll be in my house on a day of my choosing. Immediately, the smile on her face dissipated, and nervousness stirred in her chest. She twisted her hands together as she looked away. Why did she have a bad feeling about this? Why should I meet him at your house? She asked anxiously. Could she turn down his proposition and make him change the place of meeting? Or would Harvey be able to persuade her to accede to his demand? Episode 42, At Harvey's House. Sensing Evelyn's apprehension, Harvey teased her. Because I'm the one who organized this. If you want to learn from the best designers, you have to do as I ask. He explained, Alex can use you as a model, and you can ask anything you like. It's a win-win situation. Wouldn't that be a great opportunity for you to learn? She glared at him. And if I don't meet him in your house? Then I won't allow you to meet, he shrugged arrogantly. The jerk! Evelyn wanted to walk away from this offer, but she was already at her wit's end. Alex was one of Harvey's favorite designers, so he'd listen to his boss. What else could she do but follow his request? Despite the rage brewing in her chest, she grudgingly agreed. On Thursday, Evelyn switched shifts with her colleagues, sighing in relief. You're a savior, Nancy, she said thankfully. I know it's hard for you to work during the weekend, so it's no problem. Besides, including the other shifts you've taken for me, I'll be able to travel around with my boyfriend for 4 days. 4! Nancy clapped her hands together as she shooed her away. Call it a joint effort. She smiled. For now, she'd be accompanying Mark for the next 2 days, not wanting to frustrate him. Besides, she had received a large pay as her modeling fee. Even after paying off Mark's tuition, she'd still have some extra money left. She could finally buy all the things she was so hesitant to buy. Hell, she could even buy her brother a pair of new sneakers he had been wanting. If I'm lucky, I could even have the chance to apply for the autumn designer recruitment, she murmured to herself. A smile developed on her lips. Although she was angry at Harvey for being too overbearing, she was thankful that he had stumbled into her life. Otherwise, she would have spent years struggling as she stalked other celebrities. Considering this, she continued to serve the other guests. Upon seeing another seated customer, she stepped towards him. Hello, is there anything I can help you with? Hi, I'll order the usual. A gentle voice sounded, and she finally took a better look at him. His meticulously combed hair glistened in the sunlight as a pair of thick-rimmed glasses covered his dark eyes. He was wearing a fitted gray suit. He wasn't handsome or fully ordinary. She just couldn't figure him out. His hair was so long that it covered almost half of his face. He didn't look like the arrogant guests sitting around him, but rather he was different, shyer. However, that didn't affect her attitude. So, it's you again, she smiled, picking up the menu. Sure, I'll have the order ready in a few. This customer had come in every day recently, so she recognized him and what he wanted to order. There was already a sense of familiarity with the way she addressed him. "Thank you. And I wanted to ask, are you the model on the billboard?" The man tilted his head to look her right in the eyes. "You look a bit like her." "Ah, many of my customers say we look alike." She faked a laugh. It's been an excuse she used in the past couple of days. But that's not the case. After all, there were a couple of people with sharp eyesight. Thanks to the advertisement, she had recently been a bit more popular with the customers, so she was used to evading their questions. After she had left, the man continued to watch her from behind his glasses. He observed every detail of her actions as his lenses reflected the sunlight. There was no way to tell what he was thinking. Evelyn didn't even notice this as she continued with her work. Fortunately, nothing happened during the next half an hour, and the man left as soon as he finished his meal. Once Nancy saw the guest leave, she heaved a sigh of relief. She pulled her colleague over. "Evelyn," she instructed, "you should be more careful, okay? The customer who had just left, our regular, he has been staring at you ever since he got here." Evelyn blinked in surprise. "It can't be," she hesitated. "You're certain?" "Positive," Nancy replied. "Although you deny that you are the model on the billboard, it's likely that people will still manage to connect the dots. I don't know what the man was thinking, but you should be more careful, okay?" "Okay, I'll be on my guard." Thinking back to the night she had come across the pervert, she felt her insides grow cold. She glanced at her watch and sighed in relief. The strange guest faded to the back of her mind as excitement grew. It was almost 3 o'clock. She'd finally meet her favorite designer in just a couple of hours. The agreed time was 6 in the evening, but she didn't know that Harvey was already handling everything in his house. "You'll be meeting Evelyn after work," he stated as soon as they ended their discussion. Fixing up the documents, he gazed up at the designer. Alex nodded happily. However, just as he was about to leave, he noticed the absence of staff. "It's rare for Zach to be absent." "Ah," he stopped. "He just went to deal with something important." "Ah, no worries. I'll head off to work now." With a nod, Harvey turned his chair to face the window. Zach should be meeting that woman by now. At that moment, Zach was staring at Megan. The woman averted her gaze as she held her purse close to her chest, as if she was afraid of getting mugged. He didn't have to study psychology to know her current mood and thoughts. She was very good at disguising herself, but she wasn't as naive as one might think. While her pale dress and simple jewelry might portray a meek and bashful person, she was vicious when she wanted something. "Zach," she said, clenching her fists under the table, "I got your call, and I wondered what you meant by saving my family business." He pushed his glasses up on the bridge of his nose. "Harvey wants to bring Mr. Timothy Green to the anniversary party. He will even speak to you about saving your family business if you go. I'm sure you already know the consequences." She blinked, drumming her fingers against the table. "And why would he help me?" Megan wasn't stupid enough to think that Harvey had been into her, but something wasn't adding up. "It's not any of your business." Zach leaned back against his seat, "and it's not something you have to know. Besides, it has nothing to do with you, as long as you do as he says." "Sorry, I'm just confused." She knitted her brows together. "I know it's not my place to ask about him, but what exactly does he want me to do?" "Bringing Timothy to the party will benefit both your family business and your relationship," Zach replied coldly. Megan narrowed her eyes as she thought back to the day Harvey had come to fetch Evelyn from the hotel. Ah, so that was what he was trying to do. He was trying to sever the ties between Timothy and Evelyn. She covered her mouth in surprise as a thought occurred to her. The model on the billboard. Is it her? And the reason Harvey wants Timothy to come is also because of her? Harvey, practically royalty in a city like New York, liked an ordinary girl like Evelyn? Were they dating? "I'm not here to entertain any of your questions, just your answer," Zach said coldly as he pushed a gold invitation towards her. The intricate design glittered under the artificial light, and she couldn't help but be impressed by the sight. "Will I be expecting you?" She slowly picked the invitation up in her hands. While it was light, she could feel the heavy weight of their expectations. "Please tell Harvey that I'm willing to cooperate with him," she replied. Whatever his relationship was with Evelyn, it didn't matter to Megan. As they say, if they shared the same goal, why spend eternity butting heads? Evelyn had no idea what Harvey was planning behind her back. She could think only about the vacation she and Mark had planned for themselves. "Mark," she called him up, I've already applied for leave today, so I'll be free during the weekend. That's great. I'll arrange everything. No, it's fine. I can do it. Please, let me do it. Mark's voice echoed from the other end of the line. Don't worry about the bills either. I'll handle that too. Oh, by the way, I'm not heading back tonight, okay? Make sure to get home early. Evelyn chuckled. Okay, you don't have to worry about me. Also, make sure to lock the door properly. Check the peephole if anyone were to knock. And there was a short pause before he asked, no one found out that you're a model, right? Like, no one's suspicious? No, I put their suspicions to rest by denying that the model is me. She rolled her eyes. I'm not a child anymore, Mark. I can take care of myself. It's because you've always been so careless, he sighed. Look, call me if you need anything, all right? I'll pick up, no matter what I'm doing. Yes, I know you will. After saying their farewells, Evelyn ended the call with a shake of her head. When would this train of lies end? She turned around and gazed at the large house behind her. Go home early? Knowing Harvey's personality, there might even be a chance that she wouldn't go home at all. Fortunately, Mark wasn't planning to be at their home tonight, or else she wouldn't know what to say. She couldn't even use Cindy as an excuse now that she had gone on her trip. With a sigh, she rang the doorbell and was greeted by a housekeeper. She walked through the corridor and into the living room, only to see Harvey sipping a cup of tea on the sofa. The aroma spread across the room, and she immediately stepped back. Her gaze became wary, like prey about to stumble into a trap. Didn't you say Alex was here? Why are you the only one here? She snapped before he could even speak. Were you lying to me? His gaze grew cold. Are you that sick of seeing me? Am I not as attractive as my designer? That designer? She snorted. He's the most popular designer in the country right now. This man knew how to screw up one's confidence. So what? He shrugged. I'll say the same thing to his face. With a helpless roll of her eyes, she placed her bag on the farthest side of the sofa and sat down. Is he not here yet? She furrowed her eyebrows. Maybe I should come back at 9, and Harvey wasn't even listening to her as he stared at the distance between them. Why are you sitting so far away from me? To maintain a safe distance, she snorted. I came here to ask for fashion advice, not to do other things with you. He tilted his head. Unlike his usual business outfit, he was dressed in a fitted shirt and black pants. Do you think it's that dangerous to sit close to me? He crossed his legs slowly. And what do you mean by other things? The corners of his lips curled upwards as a mischievous glint flashed in his eyes. At the sight, she could feel her heart skip a beat. His mere voice was dangerous. Shrinking back into the cushions, she snapped, Just don't get too close to me, and I'll feel much safer. This is my house. He cocked an eyebrow. Every inch of this place is mine, and you're asking me to restrict myself? Evelyn blinked. At this point, restricting him any further would just push him to become even more insistent. With a wave of her hand, she turned away. Fine, you're right, she said through gritted teeth. Do whatever you want. Right. I can do whatever I want. Standing up, Harvey walked to her side of the couch and sat down. A smile appeared on his lips. Seeing his cocky facial expression, she took a pillow and wrapped it around her chest, staring straight ahead. He squinted his displeasure in her direction. So, she planned on playing hard to get, huh? You know, it's getting really hot these days. Raising his hands, he hooked his fingertips around his collar and elegantly unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. Then he went for the second button. And the third. Slowly, he revealed bits of his chiseled chest as he pulled his shirt open. Beads of sweat trailed down his neck, sliding down his abdomen. Even while she was looking away, she couldn't help but see the sight from the corner of her eye. Her cheeks reddened. Just as he was removing the fourth button, she finally had enough. What the hell are you doing? He raised his eyebrows. It's hot. What's wrong with me taking off my clothes? If you're hot, you can adjust the air conditioner, she sputtered. This man was just too much. She couldn't help but stare at his collarbone, letting her gaze wander down his muscled chest. No, she withdrew her gaze. She couldn't do this. No way in hell. This is my home. I can do whatever I want. Harvey opened the last button of his shirt and hooked his fingers around his belt buckle. Since it's so hot, I might even take off my pants. No! Before he could say anything, she immediately jumped in to grab his hands. You can't take those off. Why can't I take off my clothes in my own house? I'll see you, she snapped. So what? I don't mind you looking. He shrugged. You can stare all you want. Just put your clothes on. But you're not allowed to take it off. And why would I listen to you? Just don't take it off. Their voices echoed throughout the house. If they had neighbors, they would have probably chuckled at the argument. Upon seeing the red glow on her face, Harvey couldn't help but find it more interesting to tease her. He leaned in and slowly pulled on his belt. Maybe I should. No! Evelyn desperately pressed against his hands, holding him tightly. You can't. Harvey's shirt was completely unbuttoned, and Evelyn was kneeling on the sofa, grabbing his belt. Suddenly, a shrill scream suddenly broke through the silence. Episode 43, Discovered Her Secret. Alex was scared out of his wits. Turning around, he rubbed the side of his face. I'm sorry, he murmured. I didn't do it on purpose. I should leave now. Please continue. Evelyn trembled with anger at being caught in such a compromising position. She wished the ground would open up and swallow her. Scrambling up, she protested. It's not what you think. Don't worry, he said quickly, covering his eyes. I didn't see anything. I should leave now. Anxious, she grabbed onto Harvey's arm. Say something, she whispered urgently. Tell him what was going on. Come back. He glanced at her one more time and coughed awkwardly. What you saw just now was a practical joke. Let's forget all about this, all right? Harvey slowly buttoned his shirt and relaxed on the sofa as he spoke. The mockery in his eyes had dissipated as he addressed the designer. It was as if nothing had happened. Alex hesitantly turned around, seeing that everything had reverted to normal. When Harvey pointed at the opposite chair, he sat down. But the awkwardness in the air still persisted. Don't worry, he said. I didn't see anything. Even if this wasn't a practical joke, Harvey's home was still his private place, and it would be acceptable to take care of such matters behind closed doors. After all, they were lovers. Whatever. He was only thankful that the man didn't catch them in a more intimate position. Nodding in satisfaction, Harvey glanced at Evelyn, who lowered her head in shame. The redness in her cheeks still hadn't faded. I've already explained it to him. You can wipe that look off your face. Even then, she continued to hide her face behind her long hair. It was terrible. Why was it that everyone always misunderstood their relationship whenever someone saw them? It was Harvey's fault, that bastard. This was just too embarrassing. Not able to help herself, her murderous gaze landed on the man beside her. How can you be so calm? She whispered harshly. Don't you have any shame with what you just did? Hearing you say that. He slowly raised his head. His icy demeanor had returned, and she could feel a chill. Do you want me to drop this meeting now and send you on your way? Fine, I'm sorry, she snapped. She hated how she was always on edge around him, second-guessing their relationship. But who could fault her for it? Knowing that she couldn't take this any further, especially with a guest around, she quieted down and turned back to Alex. While Harvey looked like he was back to normal, he couldn't help but feel awkward about the earlier scene. He had acted childish a few minutes ago. It was too late to go back now. Taking a deep breath, he shook the thought away and turned his attention back to the present. Didn't you say that you'd have to go back earlier tonight? He asked. Go change into the clothes Alex prepared for you, and you can start working. As if she had just been electrocuted, Evelyn jumped from her seat and looked around. Wait! Alex stood up. The clothes. You'll find them in the third room. Just walk through that corridor. After that, we can meet in the garden. Flustered, she nodded. Okay. Seeing that she had finally left, Harvey turned to the man in front of him. I'll leave the two of you to your creative space. His gaze darkened. Say whatever you want, but you're not allowed to demean her as you did at the restaurant. Also, don't mention anything you've seen just now. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I understand. He nodded. Was Harvey protecting her? No matter how many times he had witnessed such adoration, it was still surprising how the cold CEO could care so much for a single woman. Harvey didn't even bother to look at his puzzled expression as he went upstairs. Once he had reached his study, he received a call from Zach. Is it done? Megan said that she'll bring Timothy to your company's anniversary, he replied. Great, he smiled. Thank you for your hard work. Hanging up on his phone, a light flashed across his eyes. This time, he wanted to completely sever Evelyn's ties with Timothy. She just needed to stay by his side. Evelyn sat on the swing in the quiet garden behind the villa with her back facing the beautiful champagne roses. The white dress glittered under the moonlight, its silky fabric brushing against the hardwood. She looked so pure and elegant, like a fairy who had fallen from the sky. The silent atmosphere was filled with soft noises of Alex's pen etching against the paper. Despite the calm air, it was still awkward between them. Evelyn knew that when designers were in their inspired mood, it was best not to disturb them, but she really couldn't hold it in anymore. After around half an hour of silence, she finally said, "I told Harvey that I'd come only if I could ask for your advice. I know you don't like me, but I hope you can make an exception." She didn't come here for free, after all. She came here to gain more experience. "I can give you my notes," he finally said, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "There are details there that you have to pay attention to." Her eyes brightened. "Thank you so much." While he was unpleasant, he was still really good at his job. His notes would be helpful to her journey as a fashion designer. "Speaking of which," he glanced up at her, "can you show the expression you had on the billboard? The same one? I can't seem to get any inspiration from you." She furrowed her eyebrows. "Are you telling me to laugh?" "No, it's not that. I just want to get the same sweet and shy feeling we got from the advertisement." He wrinkled his nose. "It's just, looking at you right now, you're not giving me anything. It's different from the commercial, that sweet essence." Evelyn blushed in embarrassment. She didn't even know where that look came from. It was just... Her thoughts trailed off as she saw Harvey walking toward the swimming pool. He was only wearing a bathrobe with his back facing the garden. She blinked. Did he want to swim? The dim light shone over his tall figure, highlighting his dark hair and tanned skin. Slowly, he took off his bathrobe. He was only wearing a pair of swimming trunks, and his muscles were incredibly well-defined. His figure would have been ideal for any fitness or fashion magazine. What the hell was he doing, taking off his clothes so shamelessly? At the thought, Evelyn turned away in embarrassment. Upon seeing her flushed cheeks, Alex glanced at where she was looking, only to see Harvey standing right by the pool. There it was. A sweet glow surrounded them, and he could feel his heart warming instantly. "I understand now," he said confidently, as if he had just solved a riddle. "You're looking at Harvey. That's why you got that look on your face in the commercial." Upon hearing him, she stood up abruptly. "No way! I didn't." Alex didn't bother to comfort her as he drew the dress over the sketched model. A small smile played on his lips as he did so. His inspiration had appeared. Love can truly make people stupid, but there was something that people failed to mention about love, that it can also be sweet and intoxicating. Evelyn didn't have any characteristics that could inspire him, yet when she gazed at Harvey, she looked like a woman who had found the love of her life. It was as if the flowers had just bloomed and the air had become filled with a sweet fragrance of spring. After drawing one outfit, he heaved a sigh of relief and glanced up at her. "We should stop here for today," he said and closed his notebook. "Let's continue tomorrow." "Wait, you've misunderstood. About what you've said," she stuttered. While the designer looked normal, there was a sense of hesitation in his eyes, as if he were afraid that he'd let something slip in front of Harvey. "It's not what you think." "It's only stating my opinion." He cut her off with a shrug. "The matter between you and Harvey isn't my business, so I can only observe whatever you're projecting when you see him. Nothing else matters beyond that." "No!" Her eye twitched as she grabbed hold of his arm. Her jaw clenched. "Whatever you think our relationship is not true. It's not what you think. We're nothing but acquaintances. Please don't overthink it." There was silence for a while before the designer furrowed his eyebrows. "What are you so afraid of? If you're not in a relationship, you shouldn't be so affected that I pointed out the difference in your demeanor. It's only my job to draw inspiration from my surroundings," he said. "You look like a cat whose tail has been stepped on, as if I've just discovered your secret." She held her breath. Did he just discover her secret? Biting her lower lip, Evelyn finally let him go. His words had been like a hammer to the nail. Perhaps she had acted as if she had just been caught. How afraid was she of feeling something for Harvey? Maybe Alex was right. Why else did she seem so different in the ad, if not because he had joined her in the photo shoot? Was the scene so effective because her feelings were real? Was it because of the words whispered by Harvey in her ears? His hand clasped around hers? Everything, from how she acted to how she spoke, was because of him. Alex stared at her dazed expression as another idea occurred to him. His eyes flashed under his glasses. Not able to contain his excitement, he blurted out, "I already have a theme. The Little Mermaid. Imagine waking up from her dream as she gazes at the coming dawn. Her moving features, filled with love and desire, all turn into foam, her final disappearing act. Haven't you said enough? She snapped. Her hands were already trembling as she felt bile rising in the back of her throat. How stupid was this guy? Didn't he feel the tension in the air? Her heart tightened as an uncomfortable feeling stirred in her chest. A husky voice sounded from the back before Alex could say anything in response. What just happened? I heard someone scream from the pool. Evelyn staggered back, looking as if she had just seen a ghost. Alex gazed at her clenched hands and trembling chin. While he hadn't noticed how inappropriate his words were, he knew he had offended her. Taking a step back, he waved his hand. You don't have to worry, sir. We just shared different opinions of the theme, that's all. And the discussion got a bit intense. He nodded. I've already gathered everything that I needed. I should head back. Let's discuss the other topic next time. All right. He nodded. With one last look at her, Alex left the vicinity. Now, only the two of them were in the garden. Evelyn lowered her head as her hair fell to her sides. Her white dress fluttered with the wind, making her figure look slimmer in the failing light of evening. Harvey didn't know what they were talking about as his fingers trailed across the flowers in her hair. You look beautiful, he whispered. Her eyes widened a fraction as she suddenly dodged his moving hand. Her gaze averted to the pavement beneath her. I have to go back, she stuttered, about to leave. It was all Alex's fault. He was the one who had said those things that made her uncomfortable. What did he know about love? What did he know about her feelings? Even then, she couldn't settle her racing heart. Was she going to turn into foam? It wasn't that she didn't understand the theme or what Alex was saying. In reality, she understood everything. It's just that she wasn't the one who'd be disappearing from his sight. All this sweetness was soon to pass. Someday Harvey would get bored of everything and they'd revert to strangers again. Things would go back to normal, just like she had always wanted. She'd simply turn ordinary again, like Cinderella when the clock struck midnight. Harvey frowned. What's wrong? Are you afraid to be alone with me? Who's afraid of you? She forced herself to lie. It's just, my brother called and asked me to head back. Is your little brother 3? From what I remember, he's a university student, isn't he? He cocked an eyebrow. Is he afraid of the dark? Evelyn bit her lips. Don't worry about it. I just really have to go back. Goodbye. I'll send you back then. He grabbed her arm and pulled her into the house, and she followed right after him. She licked her lips nervously as she gazed at his back. At the same time, Timothy gazed at Evelyn's advertisement again. As his fingers trailed across the pages, he found himself in a trance over her stunning face. He wanted her. Hell, he'd die to see her, even if it meant just being her friend. Could he? She had already gone to Harvey's side, which meant she didn't feel anything for him anymore. That meant his appearance wouldn't hurt her as it had in the past. Although Evelyn was now resistant to his offer of friendship, perhaps he could be a little more forceful this time, just as she had been in the past. With this thought in mind, he stood up and grabbed his coat. However, just as he was about to leave, one of the house helps stopped him. Timothy, Megan has come to see you. He frowned. Why would she be here now? Why had she come to meet him after what had transpired between them the last time? Episode 44, A Thunderstorm. Timothy went downstairs and saw Megan sitting on the sofa in the living room. When she saw him, she stood up with a smile. Timothy, are you going out? Did I disturb you? She smiled sheepishly. I'm sorry. I should have called, I know. It's just, I thought you'd be here, so... They had always been considered childhood sweethearts, so seeing her come in and out of his home shouldn't feel out of the ordinary. However, today he felt that something was off. Even if they weren't to be engaged, they still had a past together. He had always seen her as a friend. Suppressing the eagerness in his heart to rush to Evelyn, he shook his head. It's fine. He forced a smile. Let's talk now. After ordering someone to serve them tea, they sat face to face. Megan observed his posture and frowned. You look like you've lost some weight, she noted. Have you been resting well? Yes. I've just had a few dealings with the company, so I've been busy. His smile became gentler, and she couldn't help but swoon at the sight. However, just as she was about to say something else, he cut right to the chase. Megan, is there a reason you've come here at this time? Megan held the teacup tightly in her hands as she swallowed. She knew exactly what he was thinking. If Timothy and Evelyn were together, she would have let bygones be bygones. However, he didn't want to be with either woman. That meant she still had a chance, right? She had always been by his side, through thick and thin, ever since they were children. In fact, they were so close that many believed they would marry one day. But now, she believed that since Evelyn was taken, she had some real opportunity to be with him. There will be a huge party next week, and I wondered if you could be my date. She immediately bowed her head as a bitter taste filled her mouth at speaking the words aloud. It's been a while since I came here, so I don't have any friends that I can ask. I know you might not want to, but...
Hey, we've been friends for years. Of course I'll go with you.
Upon seeing her teary eyes, he could feel his heart softening almost immediately.
Besides, it's just some silly party, not some major event, right?
He never really meant to hurt Megan. If anything, he wished she could move on and live a happier life with a man who would love her back. He sighed as a bitter smile slipped onto his lips. Didn't he wish the same for Evelyn? He could only watch her from afar now. He was willing to go through anything, as long as it was for her. Thank you, she smiled, standing up. We'll meet next Friday around 6, if that works for you. A part of her wanted to stay a little longer, but that might make her plan even more obvious. The last thing she needed was to have him question her about all the little details.
All right, let me show you out.
His shoulders sagged in relief as he led her out the door. Once she was gone, he immediately headed to Evelyn's place. It was a little after 8:30 p.m., so she shouldn't be sleeping at this time. If anything, she would be at home and studying the design of Clock's latest collection. After years of friendship, he knew her pattern quite well. He didn't know that she wasn't spending her evening hours at home, but rather in someone else's car. Evelyn didn't want to ride in Harvey's car. In fact, she would have preferred to call a taxi or take a bus ride home, but he was just too stubborn. She decided not to argue. In the car, he turned to look at her.
There will be a storm tonight, so you should get to bed early.
How do you know there's going to be a storm? She pursed her lips.
I can tell from the clouds.
Please, she snorted in disbelief. You probably just saw the weather forecast. He rolled his eyes.
Just because you need a weather forecast to predict the weather doesn't mean I do. We're not on the same level.
Harvey was a genius with his prestigious educational background and high IQ. It was such a shame that his bad characteristics completely overshadowed it. Either way, she couldn't help but trust his words, as she had no proof of something different. She stared at the darkening clouds as her fingernails dug into her palm. While her fear of thunderstorms had lessened, she had always been a little nervous whenever she was alone at home. She took a deep breath. She was an adult now. She shouldn't be worried about this, right? Her gaze swept over Harvey, but immediately turned away. Since she had told him that her brother was at home, she couldn't let him accompany her. That meant she needed to endure the night alone. The only time she needed him to stay by her side, she couldn't ask him. Forget it. As long as she turned on the music, she wouldn't even know it was raining. Everything would be fine. Besides, exposing her weakness to the man would only lead her to more trouble.
Why are you looking at me with that scowl on your face?
He suddenly asked.
Don't tell me you want me to stay with you because you're afraid of the storm.
How the hell did he know? Jolting up from her seat, she immediately turned to the car window. Please, she forced herself to say, how old do you think I am? If she had asked him to accompany her, would he? Her heart skipped a beat, but she knew that was impossible. He definitely wouldn't stay in her dodgy apartment when he had a large house just waiting for him at the other end of the city. Besides, she couldn't get too comfortable with his presence anyway. The streetlights flashed across his face, reflecting on her window. She couldn't help but gaze at his profile. Harvey was so handsome, it truly should be against the law. When God was handing out features, he had gotten the pick of the litter. He would probably claim he was sent to Earth as a gift to all womankind if she asked him. He was the whole package, from deep eyes that could see through to a woman's soul, to sweet lips that could tempt a saint, to warm hands that could comfort even the most anxious person. Yet, God had forgotten to give him a heart filled with love. Her heart stirred in her chest, and she gulped. He and Timothy were different people. There was a time when Evelyn believed she could heal the brokenness of Timothy's soul, that she could be the answer to his coldness. However, with Harvey, she knew that no matter how much she tried, she wouldn't be able to break through to him. Here, all she saw were rejections and mistakes. Would he ever fall in love with someone? What had happened in his past that made him this way? People were truly curious. The more they couldn't get in, the itchier they were to claim their prize. The more confused they were, the more curious they became. Was that why she was so attracted to him?
What are you thinking about?
Harvey's voice immediately snapped her out of her thoughts, and she jumped from her seat. We're already here. Blinking, she subconsciously reached for the door handle to get out of the car, only to be pulled back by her seatbelt. Her cheeks immediately flushed in embarrassment. Seeing this, he couldn't help but laugh.
You zoned out. What were you thinking?
I was just thinking of what I want to eat for breakfast tomorrow, she retorted defensively. If she told him what she was musing, his ego would soar through the roof. The thought of seeing him so pleased with himself left a sour taste in her mouth. His lips twitched.
You're thinking an awful lot about that mundane topic.
Yes. That's all I've been thinking about. Not wanting to stay any longer, her hands fumbled at her seatbelt. However, no matter how many times she tried to unfasten it, she couldn't.
You were stupid.
There was an affectionate twinge in his cold words.
Don't move, I'll do it for you.
Evelyn leaned against the seat and watched as he crept closer toward her. They were close now, and she could smell the mint in his breath, fanning against the side of her neck. There was something so intoxicating about his scent that it could send her heart into palpitations just by getting close to him. It was as if time had stopped all around them. She could see his fingers slowly clicking onto the seatbelt. While he wasn't fumbling like she was, there was something so intentional about his movements, as if he was planning something else.
Do you know what else I could do with you?
His lips were an inch away from her as his dark eyes swept over her face. Her heart raced in her chest. Her bottom lip trembled as she thought back to their kiss the other day. Not really knowing what to say, she turned her head. I don't know. When he heard this, his lips curled into a mocking smile. He didn't need to be a mind reader to read through her mind.
Lies.
Her cheeks reddened. At this point, she wanted to get away from here, but it was as if her body refused to listen to her orders. She couldn't move as Harvey lifted her chin and kissed her right on the lips. She couldn't even put up any form of resistance as she saw him move even closer. Their lips intertwined and she could feel him lighting a fire in her chest. And it burned so bad and yet felt so good. No, Harvey had always done whatever he wanted with her and she always followed through. Evelyn shouldn't have fallen into his hands repeatedly, but how could she not? There was something so intoxicating about his lips, scent, and hands. She knew he was poison, but she couldn't help herself. He was probably the most irresistible kind of forbidden fruit to a woman. She wanted to resist and escape, but she sank deeper into his kiss. Her fingers twitched, wanting to run them through his soft hair. His grip around her waist tightened. They lingered for a solid minute before he finally broke away. She gasped as the feeling continued to burn in her chest. Her red lips looked moist under the moonlight as his hand slowly caressed her face. Even from afar, she could see the desire burning in his eyes. I won't be doing anything with you, she stuttered, as if waking up from her dream. I'll leave now. Even Harvey was startled by her response. He gazed up at the house. Knowing her, they wouldn't be doing anything in front of her house. With a sigh, he slowly retreated. Not wanting to make things difficult for her, he waved his hand.
Hurry up and go,
he stated,
or else I'll change my mind.
She blinked in surprise. Not knowing what else to say, she fled in panic and rushed up the steps to her home. Just as she was about to reach the front door, the thunder clapped around the building and she froze. Her heart trembled. She had already escaped Harvey's clutches, so why did nature have to be her greatest hater? Her hands shook as she stared up at the rumbling clouds. Guess Harvey's prediction wasn't far off, although a part of her wished he was wrong. Her eyes narrowed and she glanced back at the parked car. She wanted to turn back and return to the shelter of his arms. If she said she was afraid, would he hug her close and keep her thoughts away from the thunder? In response, the thunder rumbled above her and her fingernails scraped against the handrail. She rushed up the stairs before she could change her mind. Trying to calm her trembling fingers, she managed to insert her key into the door and stumbled inside. You'll be okay, she whispered to herself. After turning on the lights, she flipped on the TV and maxed out the volume. Now the thunder was finally drowned out in the background. She pulled on the curtains and gazed down. There she could see Harvey leaning against his car and raising his eyebrows at her, as if he was expecting her to do this. From afar, she could even see a small tilt of his lips. She suddenly pulled on the curtain to cover her face as if caught in the act. The thunder outside got louder and louder, but his car had already disappeared when she turned to look around. Feeling a sense of loss, she sat on the sofa. She pulled her legs close to her chest and tried to pay attention to the show. However, no matter what she did, she couldn't get Harvey out of her mind. What was he doing now? Had he already gone home? Would he come back? Just as she was getting worked up with all the questions, the thunder crackled all around her, and the fear intensified. Sweat beaded down the back of her neck. Only then did she notice how much she was trembling. Suddenly, her neck felt uncomfortable as she trailed her hands down her skin. She started coughing uncontrollably as one of her hands pounded on her chest. No, what was happening? It was as if someone was holding her neck and she couldn't free herself. She jumped off the sofa and went to pull the curtains open. However, before she could, the doorbell echoed across the living room. She froze. Harvey? Had he come back? Was he worried about her? Or was it someone else? Episode 45. A Visit. Evelyn's eyes widened, and an unknown feeling ran through her veins as she rushed over to the door without thinking. Harv? She didn't even get a chance to say his name when she saw who it was. A shiver shot down her spine. Timothy! Timothy's gentle face shone under the artificial lighting as his soft brown eyes leveled with hers. There was a sense of melancholy in them, something that looked all too familiar from that last meeting between them. Her grip on the door tightened. She didn't even think about the rain as she stood there, frozen in place. Evelyn, can I come in? His lips curled up into a polite smile. The storm thundered in response. Evelyn wasn't expecting him. She had already put all her memories behind her. She'd want to think that her history was hundreds of years ago, so she didn't know what to say to him, nor if she wanted to have a visit on this gloomy night. Who would have thought that she'd see him again in her apartment? The rainfall was harsh. While she still felt uneasy with the constant thunder, she didn't want to seek any help from Timothy. If it had been Harvey, she would have thrown herself into his arms immediately, even if the rational part of her mind was against it. It didn't matter if he mocked her for it or not, but with Timothy, her mind had already wholly decided against him. She couldn't bring herself to seek comfort with him in any way. She didn't want to anymore. He was her first love, the love she had always hoped for, but he wasn't the man she was craving these days. Her fingers twitched as she fiddled with her shirt. But with this kind of weather, 2 were still better than 1. Plus, it wasn't as if she could force him away from the door. With a sigh, she turned sideways. Please, come in. Timothy stepped inside and looked around. While he hadn't been here for a long time, the place was still the same. A smile shone on his lips. At least some things didn't change. He had often come here with dinner in his hand, and even slept over at times. Thinking about it now, he couldn't help but think it had happened a century ago. Let me make you some tea, she said, interrupting his thoughts. He gazed at her as she poured them tea. I don't have to worry about you after all, he said. You aren't afraid of the rain anymore. Evelyn forced a smile. I'm much better now, she responded. So, Timothy, why are you here at this time? Did something happen? Is Cindy okay? At her line of questioning, he lowered his head. Right. It seemed he was too stuck in their past. I still remember every time I visited here before, he stated. You'd laugh and let me in, even if I didn't have much of a reason to visit. Yet now things have changed, haven't they? Couldn't we at least be friends, like the way we used to be? She had another man by her side, but the thought of it was enough to make his head hurt. His jaw clenched as he turned away. Perhaps it was his fault for driving her away like he had. His brown eyes were so expressive. She had always wondered how a young man could have eyes that held so much meaning. He was elegant and gentle, the perfect Prince Charming. But now, she sighed. Why couldn't he just accept that they were now strangers? That they just couldn't be together anymore? She shook her head. It's better this way, she said softly. Do you blame me then for what happened in the past? His heart pounded in his chest. I never blamed you, she immediately said. It's just the best for us. Some things are just not meant to be. If we get closer, what will happen if I start having feelings for you? I can't force you to like me as before. And I'm sure you've grown tired of me bugging you. Not knowing what else to say, she decided to draw up the worst-case scenario. Hopefully, he would back out now. Although she couldn't have feelings for him again, she could always scare him into giving up. They had lived fine without the other. Didn't the past few years confirm that already? What's wrong with reverting to being strangers, when they had been like that ever since he had gone abroad? Evelyn liked Harvey now, and everything else didn't matter much. Timothy sat opposite to her as he gazed at her soft face. While Harvey was floating through her mind, she appeared in his. Upon hearing what she had said, his heart skipped a beat. Would she fall in love with him again? It would be great if she did. At the thought, he reeled back in surprise. What the heck was he thinking? He had been restraining his feelings for her because it was impossible for them to be together. However, upon hearing what she had to say, hope stirred in his chest. He wanted to be with her. I should go back. Standing up, he lowered his head and avoided her eyes. There was no point in staying here if his heart was a mess. The air was suddenly charged as reality dawned on where he was. He was alone with the person he liked, and no one was around to interrupt. If he didn't leave now, it would be dangerous for both of them, and he didn't want to expose his feelings. Timothy hurriedly headed towards the door. Thinking that her words had worked, she stood up. I'll see you out. Just as she finished her sentence, a clap of thunder echoed over the city, and the room suddenly went dark. She froze. Did the power just go out? Even he was stunned. Suddenly, a lightning bolt flashed from her window, followed by low rumbles of thunder. Not knowing what to do, she immediately squatted down to cover her ears. Her body trembled in the dark as her gaze moved left to right, unsure of what to do. She closed her eyes, struggling to calm herself down, but couldn't. It was the same as that night. Her throat tightened. It's okay. It's okay. Seeing what was happening, Timothy immediately went to her side. A bad feeling stirred in his chest. Evelyn, he said in a panic. Evelyn, what's wrong? She curled on the floor and trembled. No matter how hard she covered her ears, she still couldn't escape the triggering noises. She looked like an animal trapped with no way out. The look on her face was enough to tear at his heart. Pulling her into his arms, he stroked the sides of her hair. Don't be afraid, he repeatedly said as he gently rubbed her upper arm. I'm here, okay? Don't be afraid, please. Even then, she didn't look like she could hear him. No. In her mind, she wasn't in her apartment anymore. Instead, she was on the pavement, staring at the crashed car. Her parents were trapped behind the doors, their faces squashed against the window. Fresh blood flowed down to the road, turning the raindrops bright red. She cried helplessly. Mom? Dad? Evelyn, please, you're fine. Look at me. No matter how many times he tried to get her to snap out of it, he still couldn't stop her body from trembling. Pulling her hand away, he grabbed her by the wrists. I'm Timothy. You're at home, okay? Just open your eyes and everything will be fine. No, Mom, Dad. He knew Evelyn had suffered from a previous trauma after her parents' passing. Every time it rained, she'd have chills over her body as she replayed that night in her mind. However, Cindy had told him that she had finally recovered from it, bit by bit, but it seemed that her mental condition still was triggered by things like the weather. She had gone back to that day again, and she couldn't feel his presence. Evelyn! Too anxious for his own good, he stared at her trembling lips and leaned in for a kiss. His lips were like a break from her hallucination. Warmth enveloped her, and she immediately found herself being drawn out of her thoughts. Suddenly, her parents faded to the back of her mind, and she was drawn to her apartment. Opening her eyes, she could feel a taste of lemongrass grazing against her lips. There wasn't any desire in his touch, only gentleness. Her mind had gone blank for a few seconds before she could register what was happening. Timothy had kissed her. Without thinking, Evelyn immediately shoved him away. Even Timothy was caught off guard as he fell to the other end of the floor. Their eyes widened as if they had both finally snapped out of it. Her breathing turned ragged as she clutched her clothes tightly. The atmosphere between them had turned from tense to just plain awkward. After a long while, she slowly wiped her lower lip and glanced at him. Sorry, she stuttered. I'm fine now. Thank you. She understood he was trying to help her. After all, she was already hallucinating in the storm. He had to come up with a way to shock her awake. Pushing him away was just automatic for her. While his heart ached, he still hugged her from behind. I can't leave you now, he whispered. Not like this. I'm fine, she murmured, struggling under him. You don't have to do this. Even then, he continued to hug her stubbornly. His entire chest leaned against her back. You don't have to pretend to be so strong, he stated firmly.
Just stay in my arms, even if you have to think that it's someone else hugging you."
Something about his warm embrace and scent made her stop resisting. Her mind flashed back to the time when they were together, when they had decided to go up to the mountains together. She pretended to climb up very quickly to impress Timothy, but she fell into a small ravine. It was raining so hard that night that she started to cry. Timothy had found her and carried her down the mountains despite the heavy rain. "If you weren't the one who had saved me, I would have been so scared," she said, clutching his arm. To her, he had been the best man in the world. "You've always been like this. You should leave me alone. If I fall for you again, you'll be the one who will run away from me again," she teased lightly, biting her lips. A part of her couldn't help but blame him for being so gentle and understanding toward her. Perhaps if it hadn't been this way, she would have ended up chasing after him. Even after years had passed, it was still the same.
"I'm sorry,"
he whispered. She blinked at how soft his voice was. A part of her couldn't help but feel that he was rubbing her back more intimately than usual, but that was just an illusion, right? Although he was gentle, he had his limits. Besides, he already had Megan as his fiancée, so he couldn't cross certain boundaries. Even if he held her now, it was only out of pity, not because he cared for her. At the thought, she slowly relaxed in his arms. After all, he was only doing it out of the goodness of his heart. "You really shouldn't apologize. You're being too kind." Sighing, she grabbed her phone and dialed Mark's number. "I'll call my brother over, okay? I'm sure he'll be worried." Timothy saw her grab her phone and wanted nothing more than to chuck it away. He had only one chance to hold her like this, and he didn't want to let her go. Could he ever tell her how much he loved her? Or would he sacrifice his feelings for the friendship they had? Only then did Timothy realize why he couldn't be friends with Evelyn in any way. Episode 46, Timothy's Karma. Timothy could never control his feelings around her. He'd always wanted to be more than friends, and it would cause issues as it had before. However, he couldn't help but feel as if his heart was being sliced open. "Mark," Evelyn's voice echoed across the room as she spoke on the phone. "It's raining right now. Can you come back?"
"Of course." His voice rang from the other end of the line. "I'll be there soon, okay? Just stay where you are."
Timothy knew how much the young man cared for her, and figured he was already on his way. If she asked her brother to jump off a cliff, he'd probably do it without thinking twice. After hanging up the phone, she tilted her head upwards. "I'm fine now," she said slowly, but he wasn't certain if it was to reassure him or herself. "You can head back home now." He could feel his sight already blurring from the tears. He moved close to her and murmured, "Let's just wait for Mark to return, okay?" There was a pause before he asked, "Even if I offer you my help, you wouldn't want it, would you?" She was silent before she said, "No, I don't want it." She didn't want it anymore because the person she needed help from wasn't him. It was someone else. Someone who wasn't here right now. She gazed out the window as his face flashed at the back of her mind. He smiled. What she couldn't see were the tears sliding down his cheeks. Yet he wanted to help her, to love her, and be the man she needed. Mark's expression changed immediately as he hung up the call on the other side of the city. He cared so much about his work that he didn't even notice the stormy weather outside. With his sister alone at home, she must have been terrified. He raced downstairs and grabbed his coat. However, just as he was about to go outside, Ray hurriedly blocked his way. "Hey, boss!" he called out. "I thought we were having a meeting. Where are you going?" "I have an urgent matter to attend to, so I won't be back tonight," he said calmly, but his eyes told another story. He anxiously gazed at the rumbling clouds through the open doorway. "You're free to do whatever you want." He stepped out of the door without looking back. He didn't even bother to grab his umbrella. As he was leaving, 5 people shared a look at his sudden disappearance. Their eyes knit together in confusion, unfamiliar with the panic in the man's eyes. "What's going on?" One of them raised his eyebrows. "Did something happen?" Ray slowly shook his head. "I don't know, but I feel it has something to do with his sister." Another man, more refined than the rest of the group, took off his glasses to wipe them. "When I first met Mark, he asked me to hypnotize his sister, to make her forget the accident. She had a serious PTSD, and the rain usually triggered her panic attacks. But she should be better by now. Maybe it isn't that easy to get rid of." He shrugged.
Anyway, as long as it concerns her, no matter how small the matter is, he'll go rushing out. We should leave.
Yes, boss. While the others were getting ready to leave, Mark was already speeding his car down the road. His eyes were wide in terror as he slammed his hand onto the steering wheel. Her voice was shaking when she tried to call for him, as if she'd been crying. Did she remember anything? His heart dropped to the bottom of his stomach as the thought churned in his mind. He had already asked someone to interfere with her memory, so there shouldn't be any problems. It should be fine. It was already long ago, and she probably didn't remember it anymore. Even then, the uneasy feeling in his stomach didn't disappear. He pulled into the parking lot spot at his home, only to notice that all the lights were dark. Narrowing his eyes, he jumped out of the car and rushed upstairs. Shit, he sighed. It turned out there was a power outage. No wonder his sister was so afraid. She probably didn't remember anything, but that still didn't ease his worries. Braving the thunder, he opened the door and narrowed his eyes at the dark room. "Evelyn," he called out. "Where are you?" Timothy froze. He had held Evelyn in his arms since she hung up, allowing himself to absorb her sweet fragrance. A part of him wished that time could stop, and he could hold her for eternity. But it seemed that reality just wasn't on his side. He couldn't help but think of when she loved him and only him. It was this feeling that he had so much trouble letting go of. He squeezed his eyes shut. Please don't go. He didn't just want to be friends with her. He wanted to kiss her, to hug her. He had always loved her. Only her. "Mark, I'm here." Evelyn finally broke free from Timothy's arms as she gazed up at her younger brother. Mark sighed aloud in relief. However, just as he was about to move closer, he saw she wasn't alone. His eyes darkened almost immediately, but his heart froze when he saw who it was. "Timothy?" His voice turned icy. "Why are you here?" He knew that the man had come back, but wasn't he engaged to Megan? Why the hell was he here? Could it be that the two of them were together? No, that can't be. Timothy happened to be passing by. There was a power outage, so he stayed with me, she said awkwardly, shivering under the cold air. Pursing his lips, Timothy tilted his head. Right. Now, since you're here, I should get going. As Timothy started to pull her up, Mark pushed in and did so himself. The young man frowned as soon as he held her skin. The ground's so cold. Why are you sitting there? He sighed helplessly. I'll carry you back to your room. Evelyn's legs had gone so weak that she couldn't even struggle. Instead, she leaned against her younger brother's chest. Seeing this, Timothy awkwardly pulled back his hand and smiled faintly. You've grown a lot taller. Not at all. Just taller than you. He smiled coldly. You should head back. Thank you for taking care of her while I was gone. You don't have to worry about her anymore. Timothy stared at him for a long time. He didn't know if he was overthinking it, but he couldn't help but think of how his eyes shone with hostility. But come to think of it, that was reasonable. Given how much Timothy had hurt her in the past, it was understandable for the young man to despise him. Right, I should head back, he said in a low voice, knowing that he had no other reason to stay. I'll be leaving now. Take care, she called out, not even bothering to look at him. He walked out of the room with a heavy sigh and slipped out of the house. He stood outside Evelyn's house for the longest time. Finally, the smile on his lips slipped away from his face as his gloomy expression returned. The pain in his chest beat a wild tempo, and he couldn't help but wince. He didn't know whether it was because of illness or his unrequited love for Evelyn. He didn't know for certain. He had been so naive back then. He had thought that they had so much time, that they could first live their separate lives before continuing it together. Then he'd sweep her off her feet and take her away from this world. However, when he had received his diagnosis, he knew he didn't have much time left to make her happy. His fingers dug into his palm, drawing blood. If he had started dating her earlier, would it have been better? Perhaps they could have dated and broken up right after. Even then, at least they still would have loved each other. It would have been better than having to stand by the sidelines, never admitting his true feelings. Timothy walked down the streets in a daze. He couldn't care less about getting drenched in the rain, too consumed by his misery. Perhaps it's my karma for some wrong I committed, he murmured. A mocking smile slipped onto his lips. Once Timothy had finally left, Mark carried Evelyn into her room and placed her back on the bed. He lit a candle and turned around to hold her hand. Sis, how are you? He asked, concern laced in his tone. You don't remember anything, right? Evelyn stared up at him as she felt his cold hands wrapped around hers. Blinking, she smiled weakly. I just remembered the accident, she whispered. I'm sorry I had to trouble you.
Mark pushed her hair behind her ear. Don't apologize, he said quickly as his eyebrows knitted together worriedly. I told you to call me when you needed anything, right?
Fortunately, she only remembered the car accident and called him right after. The thought of her staying with Timothy the entire night made his stomach churn uncomfortably. Thank you, she smiled. Just the smile was enough to make his heart skip a beat.
I don't know when the electricity will come back tonight or when the rain will stop, he suddenly said as he stared up at the window. Why don't we sleep together tonight?
Evelyn blinked in surprise as she glanced up at the serious look on his face. No. Besides, I'm already fine, she started to say, waving her hand up in the air. You don't have to worry about me.
I'm your brother, he frowned, removing his jacket. Besides, we sleep together all the time. What does it matter? And now that you have panic attacks again, I don't trust you to sleep alone, especially with the power outage.
Thinking back to the time he had found her curled in a fetal position in a storm such as this, his frown deepened. Before she could respond, he had already got under the blanket and placed his head into the crook of his arm, holding her tightly. Stop messing around, she protested, pushing him with her hands. Just get off my bed.
Are you that nervous, sis?
He didn't give up on her as his arms tightened around her waist.
Is it warm? I can remove my shirt if it makes you that anxious.
However, just as he was about to pull out his shirt from his pants, she grabbed his arm. You're an idiot, she snapped, amused and annoyed. This guy was totally bewildering her, though the good thing was she wasn't focused on the storm now. Fine. If she couldn't convince him to let her go, she might let him stay here. As his arms circled her waist, she couldn't help but feel a little strange. At his touch, she thought back to when he was still a child, and she had to coax him to sleep. Now it seemed that the tables had turned. It was embarrassing. Her cheeks warmed. After stroking her hair, he tilted his head.
Are you feeling better? Can I ask you a question?
His voice was pleasant to listen to, like a harmony waiting to be played. Ask away. She closed her eyes.
Why did Timothy come over? The two of you. Do you still have feelings for him?
Choosing his words carefully, he had to pause a bit before he finally dared to ask her. However, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous even then. He just came to talk about our past, she comforted. Besides, I moved on from him a long time ago. It's just bad timing that the electricity went out when he was here. Don't think too much about it. I'll be fine. She couldn't help but remember the times she had cried over Timothy. That included so many sleepless nights and anxiety-ridden days. Mark had been so angry that he had made up his mind to go after him. He was just worried about her. That's good that she had moved on. He inhaled her sweet scent as the smoothness of her skin glowed in the room's dim light. He had to rely on his willpower to suppress his desires.
I'll be by your side, okay?
He held her a bit tighter.
You shouldn't be sad about any man. They don't deserve you anyway.
Although a little exhausted from the events that had transpired earlier, she couldn't help but smile. I know. And you should know I'm here for you too.
You remember my classmate in my psychology classes, right? Maybe he could visit you next time.
Okay.
We're going out tomorrow,
he said softly.
Sleep, okay? I'll stay with you.
Okay. There was silence for a couple of minutes before Mark finally whispered,
Do you know how much I love you?
How long before Evelyn would see through Mark's facade of brotherly love? Would Evelyn be able to accept Mark once the reason behind his over-possessiveness was revealed? Episode 47, The Stranger. Evelyn didn't respond as she breathed steadily. It was obvious that she had already fallen asleep. With a sigh, Mark gazed at her face. The beautiful woman was asleep in his arms, and her chest rose and fell with each breath. His fingers trailed down across her cheekbones as he clenched his jaw. How could she fall asleep so readily with such a sick man by her side? How much did she trust him?
You can't trust me, Evelyn,
he whispered unsteadily. If she continued to lower her guard like this, he wouldn't have it in him to restrain himself. Fuck, he was sick, taking advantage of his brotherly identity to get her to trust him. He was the worst of them all.
I hope you stay by my side, he whispered, and smile at me the way you did before.
Not able to help himself, he got out of bed and dialed a familiar number in the living room. I knew you were going to call me. The man pushed up his glasses as he spoke from the other end of the line.
What do you need from me, boss? You know what to do, he stated. I'll arrange for you to come to my sister's place next week. Hypnotize her to forget everything again. That's no problem, Tildy replied. But he hesitated. But I've already told you these things will only lock her memories for a short period. When something else triggers her, even hypnosis wouldn't be able to stop her from remembering. I know. It's not the time for this. Look, just lock it down. And when the time comes, I'll personally ask you to remove the door, he responded. All right, boss. Mark left his phone on the table and stepped back into his room. There he could see that his sister had fallen asleep. He slowly took her in his arms. He could only hope she'd forget everything and drift back to her dream. What he didn't know was that she was suffering from a nightmare. She was wearing her junior high school uniform and surrounded by a group of older men. There she saw a small child crying out loud. She stepped forward only to see how similar his face was to Mark's. Mark? Why are you crying? What's happening? Before she could find out what was happening, her surroundings started to close in around her until she could no longer breathe. Mark? Mark! Mark! Evelyn immediately sat up as the dream faded to the back of her mind. Her heart thumped in her chest and she frowned. Aw, sis, I feel so touched that you're dreaming about me. A familiar and arrogant voice called out from beside her, and she immediately breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't even care about what he said as she turned up to look at him. All she could hear were his screams in the night. She patted his cheeks, trying to see if he was crying, just like he had been in her dreams. Mark was here, and he was safe. His bright eyes, clean face, evil grin. He truly was shining, even if it was this early in the morning. However, her eyes slowly dropped to his collarbones, shoulders, then his stomach. Wait, she blinked. Stomach? How often have I told you to put on your clothes? The younger man covered his head and ducked down, groaning as she pummeled him with a pillow. Aw, sis, stop hitting me, he moaned. Are you trying to lower my IQ or something? Luckily, the walls were thick in the household. Otherwise, their neighbors would have heard their screams soaring through the roof. Evelyn came out of the room in a huff, with Mark sheepishly following behind her. I didn't mean to go in there shirtless, he protested. I just heard you call out my name, so I went in. Did you dream something that woke you up? At the thought of her dream, her lips curled. I dreamt you were crying, she slowly said. Your eyes were bloodshot and your cheeks were red. There was a circle of people around us, and they just kept coming closer and closer. I don't want to talk about it. He froze as his eyes widened. Uneasiness surged up his throat as he shoved his hands into his pockets, trying to hide his shaking fists. That's a pretty strange dream. Why would I cry if I have the best sister at my side? Flashing her a smile, he leaned in just a little bit closer. Besides, have you forgotten what today is? We're going out today. She rolled her eyes. You know how to flatter me, don't you? There was a twinge of fondness in her voice as she regarded her sibling. Fine, I'll cook us some breakfast. Without another word, she went into the kitchen to prepare their breakfast. Mark could only gaze at her back as his fingertips turned cold. Damn that power outage. Things would have been fine if it hadn't been for that rain. Now all her memories were coming back, and at the thought he gritted his teeth. No, he couldn't have that. He dialed Tildy's number. Go to the county fair, he ordered. You and Ray will meet me tonight to hypnotize her. You got it? The other man didn't need to ask anything as he nodded. Yes, boss, I understand. As soon as he hung up the phone, he leaned against the door and stared at the wall. The smile on his face had gone, and it was soon replaced with a frigid and emotionless expression. Don't think about our broken past. Not yet. After breakfast, the two of them left by bus. The weather was bright and sunny, different from yesterday's stormy and thundering clouds. Mark sat by the window. Despite being hidden in the corner, she could still see other women glancing over at him, desperate to sneak a peek. She hid a smile. Her little brother had truly grown up. Just as she was about to say something, he turned to her. You should lean on my shoulder if you want to sleep, he slowly said. We'll be on the bus for a while, so you should get some rest. It's fine. She felt a hand pushing her towards his shoulder, and Mark pressed his lips together. Go to sleep and give me your hand, he said as an afterthought, squinting his eyes in annoyance. Those women are annoying. Huh? She scowled. They'd had to pretend to be lovers when they were much younger to ward off her brother's fans. At first it was fine, but he had grown up. Even if they didn't look like each other, they were still related. The brat's being ignorant. She shoved her hand into her pocket. I won't do this again, she snapped. You're already of age. Besides, I see a lot of cute girls over there. Maybe I can ask for their number for you. If you do that, I'll think of something to embarrass you, he responded. Evelyn glared at him. I'm your sister. You think you can do anything you want? You can dare me to do it. He smiled mischievously. Something sinister about his smile made her immediately back down. She had a feeling that if she dared him, he'd do something unspeakable. With a sigh, she finally held out her hand. This is the last time, you got that? Aw, you gave me your hand. Mark's eyes sparkled teasingly as he sighed in disappointment. I thought I could finally have some fun. Her lips twitched. Continue doing that and I'll get off the bus. Okay. I'll shut up now. He slowly held onto Evelyn's hand as his lips curled upwards into a charming smile. All the women on the bus couldn't help but swoon at the sight of him. However, when they saw who he was holding, they couldn't help but shake their heads in disappointment. They had just meant up to strike up a conversation. It turned out those two were a couple, and they looked quite good, too. Mark held her hand as he stared out the window. Some might say he was admiring the landscape, but he was gazing at her reflection through the glass in reality. His cold brown eyes softened as his smile widened. These were moments when he hoped that time would just stand still, that he could hold her hands and damn the world around him. Hopefully, one day, he wouldn't have to hide in this identity anymore. Evelyn had no idea what he was thinking. Instead, she sat for a while and leaned against his shoulder. However, as she fell into the darkness, she couldn't help but think, what was she forgetting? Probably it was nothing. At the same time, in the restaurant, Harvey stayed seated as he stared coldly at the unfamiliar woman. His thin lips parted slightly. She changed shifts for 2 days? Nancy's heart gradually turned bitter. When she took the shift, she didn't expect that she would have to deal with Harvey in the process. Damn it. Nodding awkwardly, she bowed her head. I'm sorry, but yes, she won't be here today and tomorrow. Did she at least say where she went? Shocked, she slowly shook her head. No, she only asked if she could change shifts with me. Didn't say anything else. He slowly nodded, staring at his plate. That damn woman had changed shifts without telling him anything? Dissatisfied with this, he stood up and left, as something was boiling up inside of him. After he finally walked out, Nancy sighed in relief and turned around, only to see another man entering the restaurant. It was the same man with the frumpy suit and thick glasses. Welcome, she said, greeting the customer. What would you like to order? The lady who served me a few days ago. She's not here. The man pushed up his glasses, obviously disappointed. Didn't she have a morning shift today? The man came looking for Evelyn? Was he a pervert? She went on a date with her boyfriend, she deliberately said, hoping to ward him off. She won't be here for the next few days. Maybe then the guest wouldn't harass Evelyn anymore. Evelyn had always been very kind to her customers, which some idiots would think meant she was flirting with them. Being a server could sometimes be a dangerous job. While Nancy couldn't do much, she hoped that her words would be able to knock some sense into this creeper. I'm sorry. Please, for my order, I'd like... After the man finished his meal, he quietly left. Nancy sighed in relief, assuming that this was the last time they'd ever see this man again. After leaving the restaurant, the man walked to a corner and peeled off his suit jacket. He discarded his wig and glasses on the pavement, revealing his pretty face. Taking out his phone, he dialed a number. Suddenly, a voice came from the other end. Well, what do you think? Episode 48. Girls Swoon Over Mark. Evelyn and Mark finally reached their destination. Why don't you take a shower and change your clothes first? Mark told her as they entered the hotel. Then we can head to the Renaissance Fair later tonight. Evelyn frowned as she glanced at the prices of the rooms printed on the placard attached to the back of the door. The price of this hotel, it's really expensive. She tilted her head up at him. I should pay. After all, I've made a little money from my modeling gig. It's my treat, sis. Besides, my classmates' parents know the boss here, so I got us a special discount. He hurriedly explained. Don't worry, just relax, okay? Okay. Knowing that she couldn't convince him otherwise, she gave up. Just as she was going to her room, she heard her cell phone ring. She pulled it out of her purse, but her heart almost jumped out of her chest as soon as she saw the name on the caller ID. Harvey! Damn! That was what she had forgotten. She didn't tell him she had changed shifts. But wait, they didn't have to tell each other everything, right? Why would she tell him? It wasn't as if they were together or anything. Speechless, she dug her fingernails into her palms. Were they together? No, they weren't. There was no need to feel this nervous. Taking a deep breath, she picked up the phone. Hello? Evelyn, why did you change shifts? Why didn't you tell me you were changing your shifts? Where are you now? Who are you with? Man or woman? How dare you stand me up? Do you know who I am? If anyone else would have done this. What the hell? Wasn't he going to let her speak? Evelyn held her phone tightly as she gritted her teeth. This man called her just to question her like this? Was he her father or something? Couldn't he have given her a chance to explain her side of the story? Also, who the hell stood him up? It wasn't as if they had agreed to meet at the restaurant in the first place. Why aren't you talking? His crisp voice suddenly sounded from the other end of the line, and she suppressed the urge to roll her eyes. If she wasn't afraid of what he might do, she would have already hung up. Finally, you decided to give me a chance to talk? She mocked, struggling to hold back her anger. Where are you now? Who are you with? Furrowing her brows together, she frowned. I'm an independent woman. Wherever I want to go, whoever I want to be with, that's none of your business, is it? It has nothing to do with you. 30 seconds. He cut her off. I'll know where you are in 30 seconds, tops. Do you want me to find out where you are with my resources? She stayed silent for a while as beads of sweat trickled down her forehead. Damn it. Discouraged, she finally replied, I'm out of the city. There's a Renaissance fair tonight, so I came out to have a good time. There was no hiding from him anyway. The asshole knew everything. And who are you with? My brother. Are you happy now? She snapped, annoyed at his overbearing attitude. Is your brother some middle school student that you have to accompany him everywhere? And you, aren't you a full-grown adult? Are you obligated to bring him everywhere he wants? It's none of your business what I want to do. Just talking to him was already giving her a headache. I'm hanging up now. Which hotel are you staying in? Her eyes widened. Why are you asking that? A bad feeling stirred in her stomach. Wouldn't it be boring if you and your brother were the only ones there? I'm free this weekend, so why don't I accompany? He said matter-of-factly. What the hell? Did he plan to come here? If he did, then who knew what her brother would do? This hotel might become the ground zero of a bloodbath. She went pale at the thought. No, she couldn't let him come. After 30 seconds of silence, she groaned. What's happening? Hello? Can you hear me? There's no signal. Without another word, she hung up the phone and turned it off. Harvey stared at his screen in disbelief. He tried calling her again, but it went straight to voicemail. Damn it! He clenched his jaw. Never in his life had anyone ever hung up on him. This Evelyn had some nerve. Who the hell did she think she was? Did she think that silence would make him give up? That thinking was naive and totally off base. Fine, I'll show you what I can do, he murmured and dialed Zach's number. It was a rare day off, and Zach leisurely sat on his sofa drinking his coffee. He flipped through the book he was currently reading. As he was about to get to the good part, his phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, his face fell. Maybe I should write a book too, he murmured, about the CEO who never lets his assistant rest. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the phone. Boss? When could he have just one relaxing day? The hotel was supposed to be relaxing, but why did it only make Evelyn feel worse? She took a deep breath and patted her cheeks, struggling to calm herself. All she could think about was Harvey's phone call. She had hung up on him. Him! The richest guy in New York! Thinking about it, a wave of fear seized her insides. Was he going to rush over here and make a scene? Was everyone going to witness her public humiliation? Even as these thoughts flooded her mind, Evelyn resisted the urge to call and apologize. Instead, she changed into a sleeveless tee and shorts and left the room. The weather was boiling, so she had to wear something light to start the day. Mark was already waiting for her outside. As soon as he saw what she was wearing, he pointed to his own similarly colored shirt and shorts. Hey, it looks like we're wearing a couple's outfit, he teased. It's more like a sibling's outfit, she rolled her eyes. A mischievous smile curved his lips as he hugged her from behind. Even then, you're still like my younger sister, he teased. Come on, maybe you should call me Big Brother Mark instead. You want me to put you in your place? She muttered, elbowing him. While she was annoyed, she couldn't help but be amused by his words. The more he grew up, the unrulier he became. It's like he's aging backward. They had walked just a short distance when a girl stuck her head out of the window.
Look, they're siblings, not lovers, she whispered excitedly. We got this.
Behind the young girl, a boy stuck his head out of the room helplessly. Hey, what do you mean? And how do you plan to make this work?
We just have to rely on our abilities. Besides, we've already talked about it, the girl stated. We'll find an opportunity to get close to his sister. She looks pretty easygoing, so we need to wait for the right window to start a conversation. Once that's done, you can grab your chance with her.
Evelyn had no idea that they were being targeted. She enjoyed her lunch before going back to the room to change for the hot springs. A small smile slipped onto her lips as the calming water lapped around her a short time later. She didn't even notice that the 3 women followed closely behind her. She soaked into the waters and closed her eyes. Why hadn't she thought of going to a hot spring before?
Excuse me,
a voice called out from in front of her, and she opened her eyes.
We're students on break from university, and I wanted to say how handsome your brother looks. We were wondering if you could set him up with us.
She tilted her head and stared at the 3 adorable young girls before breaking into laughter. Her brother was popular with the ladies, that was for sure. Mark is a really lucky man, she said. It's a good thing that he's still single. Why don't you leave it to me, okay? Evelyn couldn't help but smile. She was happy for her brother. After all, Mark was the only boy in their family, so he would eventually be the one to carry on the family name. While she had always pestered him with questions about his relationships, he'd always shrugged her off. It's time she took matters into her own hands, she thought with a grin. The fair would be incredibly fun, and the night would be ever so romantic. With a cute girl to accompany him, even his stony heart wouldn't be able to say no to some adult fun. Without another thought, she relayed her plan to the girls. Evelyn smiled and waved at the young women coming out of the hot spring. Mark, who had witnessed the entire thing, couldn't help but frown. What were you just talking about?
Oh, nothing. Just a few fashion tips.
She blinked innocently and turned away. The last thing she needed was for him to suspect her plans. Otherwise, he wouldn't be attending the Renaissance Fair later. Fortunately, he didn't care about that at all. Instead, he held her hand and led her out of the hot spring. Let's go for a walk, he intoned. I heard the gardens at the back are lovely.
About the Renaissance Fair, she said slowly. You should wear the black shirt I got you. Did you bring it with you? It would suit you.
His messy hair fell in front of his eyes as he held her hand. I knew you would say that, so I packed it. He replied, smiling at her. I've also prepared a special outfit for you. Did you see it? Stunned for a moment, she recovered and nodded.
Yeah, I did.
He may not see it yet, but Evelyn's surprise was bigger. He would spend the night with an adorable woman, or 3 if he chose to. She changed the topic.
So how's it going with school?
Oh, it's okay. The 2 chatted for half an hour. After that, they returned to their rooms to rest and waited for the sun to set. The bigger shows were set to start after sunset. As Evelyn had asked him to wait by the main gate, he obediently stood by the spot and waited. However, as the number of people gradually increased, she still hadn't appeared. He frowned slightly, but just as he was about to go in search of her, he heard a girl calling from behind.
Mark!
He turned toward the voice, and 3 women crowded around him before he knew it. One girl stepped forward and pushed a strand of hair behind her ear.
We're students on break, she slowly said. We met your sister Evelyn earlier, and she asked us to visit the fair with you. Is that okay? She arranged the whole surprise.
His face remained impassive. Where's my sister?
Evelyn said she wanted to go to the fair herself. But don't worry, the other woman blurted. We've already asked a few of our friends to go with her. We should go.
An indescribable emotion passed over his face as soon as he heard this. It was as if the hot summer had turned cold. All 3 girls froze in surprise. What was happening? He had looked so handsome earlier, but now it looked like he was going to murder all of them. A shiver ran down their spine. Leave. Their bodies stiffened.
What?
Mark's gaze became sharper. Get out of here now, and tell your friends to stay away from my sister. His voice became colder with each word. Otherwise, I'll have to be forced to do something you won't like. His pupils dilated, and it suddenly looked like he was a beast searching for its prey. The others trembled. Sweat beaded down their foreheads as they staggered backward, scared by the swift change the conversation had taken. Even if he was joking, his expression sure wasn't. Mark stomped to the fair alone without a glance in their direction. The 3 women trembled as they all shared looks.
He's pretty scary, one of them stuttered. What the hell did we just do? Call Chad. Don't let those 2 idiots try anything.
They didn't know Evelyn was already being hounded by the two handsome university students. "How about let's play that little fishing game?" one student asked Evelyn, pointing to an arcade area a short distance away. "If you win, you can give me your phone number." "Chad, you got this," the other student praised. "How about this? If I win, I'll get a picture with you, Evelyn. You look stunning tonight. If I upload a photo of us today, I will be the most popular guy by morning." She suppressed a scowl. Who the hell were these two creeps? She was a few years older than them, and they had no shame flirting with her. Her fingers dug into her palms, tempted to throw a punch to get them to leave her alone, as words were not helping. If Mark was here, she had only wanted to get her brother a cute girlfriend, not subject herself to this kind of trouble. She could only hope that these two would get bored soon and scamper off at this point. "Since you guys are competing, why don't I participate too?" An icy voice sounded behind them, and her eyes widened. "If I win, you guys can eat the fish I caught out of that dirty bucket." In front of her was a pair of expensive leather shoes. Her eyes traveled upwards, only to see a handsome face staring back at her. Fuck. Why was he here? What was he doing here? Episode 49. Was this a date? Evelyn's legs shook a tad, and her heart skipped a beat after seeing the man in front of her. This was impossible. "And where'd you come from?" Chad clenched his fists, about to give this guy a good punch. However, when he saw who the man was, he fell silent. Chad could feel his legs go weak, and he plopped onto the ground, unable to make a sound. Why the hell was he so scared? In the past, he had fought guys bigger than him and stronger than a wrestler. However, upon seeing his well-ironed suit and fixed gaze, Chad couldn't help but be at a loss for words. Harvey turned to look at Evelyn. "Is he your younger brother?" Evelyn swallowed as she shook her head. "No, they're not my brothers." At the sight of his clenched jaw and flared nostrils, she couldn't help but worry. Shit, he was going to do something bad. She was certain that he would give her an earful for this. However, as her thoughts ran wild, Harvey shoved his hands in his pockets and spoke to the men. "If you don't want to eat that fish, I suggest you guys get out of here." Chad and the other guy were scared out of their wits and immediately sprinted away. No way was this guy kidding. He looked angry enough to tear them to pieces. After chasing away the two men, Harvey shifted his focus to Evelyn. The scene had gathered a lot of onlookers. "He's so handsome," one of them murmured. "Is he a movie star or a model?" "He's neither. While he may look handsome, he was a devil hidden under that fancy clothing." "What should I do? He's so hot. Should I go up and try to talk to him?" one of them whispered, trying her best to get a better look. "Who's that woman beside him? Do you think he's taken? Is that his girlfriend?" She could hear a lot of chatter swirling around her, and she wished the ground would open up and swallow her whole. When the heck was this embarrassment going to end? "Why aren't you talking?" Harvey gazed at her, grinding his teeth. "I came all this way to see you. I would have expected you to be a bit happier than this." "Look, about the phone call," she stuttered, stepping back. "I had a lot of reasons for that, and I can't explain it. But my brother, he won't be happy that you're here." "Why the hell would the guy be unhappy? I am well off, and I think he should be happy for his sister," he stated. Evelyn smiled bitterly. "That's exactly why he'd be pissed off. Besides, do you even know what kind of reputation you have? What do the press and others say about you?" She pointed to herself. "I'm just an ordinary person." Sometimes she thought Harvey was no different from her. However, the next moment reminded her they were worlds apart. It was this distance that shouldn't be crossed. The light from the fancy lantern-looking lights hung all around the fair, shone on her outfit, making the white fabric glisten. It complemented her beautiful face, fitting her personality and body type to perfection. He had been so frustrated when he arrived, but found himself relaxing almost immediately as soon as he saw her stunning face. Seeing her dressed so beautifully tonight, he couldn't find it in himself to argue any further. Besides, this night was far too romantic to be ruined. "So, where's your brother now?" He pursed his lips. "He had gone to the fair with a few girls who were interested in him," she responded awkwardly. "I gave them a shot with him by arranging a date." "Your brother sounds very popular." She nodded. "He is." "So it seems that we won't have to worry about your brother now," he said, stepping toward her. "It's our time to be alone." Evelyn widened her eyes as she turned to look up at him. He was already pulling off his tie and unbuttoning his collar. What the heck was he doing? However, before she could ask him, he glanced at the fishing game that Chad had referenced earlier. "Do you want me to catch some fish?" Her heart was already beating wildly in her chest, and she blushed in embarrassment. "Let's play," she murmured. "I'm very good at fishing, and I think I can beat you." Was this a date? The way he said it just now. Her heart thumped in her chest, and she immediately shook her head. No, this was not a date. Harvey, unaware of her thoughts, snorted. "You're overly confident, aren't you?" He played with the paper scooper in his hands as a thought occurred. "It's my first time playing this game, but I think I'd be pretty good. How about this? The loser must do anything the winner says for one full day. What do you say to that?" "Don't you think the bet's going too far?" She bit back, but she finally nodded after a couple of seconds. "Fine. You know what? Let's do this." Harvey had never played this game before, so she should be better than him. She'd win easily, and then she could make him do her bidding. Yes, that's the plan. Her face shone with determination. She was going to win. However, 5 minutes later, the owner of the goldfish stall stared at the number in Harvey's basket impressed. Even Evelyn couldn't help but stare in disbelief. "What the heck just happened?" "I got 8, and you only got 2. He confirmed as if he were explaining it to a 2-year-old. "You now have to do anything I ask." Her mouth twitched. Ugh, this guy was annoying as hell. Date? How the hell did she think this was a date? This was ridiculous. The more she thought about it, the more she believed it was impossible to date someone like him. Harvey stood up and extended his hand. "Let's go," he said. "It's my first time being at a fair like this, and it looks quite interesting. It happens every year in the summer. Plus, it's only held here. How have you never been to one of these before?" Evelyn asked in a shocked tone. "You know how I grew up," he simply said in response. Right. She had forgotten he was some big-shot CEO that had climbed the ladder through hard work and determination. In the end, just the thought of him participating in these types of mundane activities was laughable. However, as she stared into his eyes, she didn't see disdain or disgust, but anticipation. Harvey was like a young child, curious about the world. Her heart softened as she took a step forward. "How about we take a look around?" she suggested. "There's plenty of delicious food around here, and I'm sure you haven't eaten most of the items." She glanced at the goldfish that was the winning prize for their game. "We could take that with us?" "Of course. We won it." As soon as they took the goldfish, Evelyn started pointing in different directions with ideas for what they should do next. Her eyes were glistening like a child on Christmas Day. He, on the other hand, stared blankly at her. Why was she so happy suddenly? He shrugged, turning away. Forget it. She looked better like this. "I'm hungry," he said. "What's good to eat here? Hurry, and let's find something to eat." "Oh, calm down. Look, there's a lot of people here, and it will take some time." She pointed at one of the stalls. "They serve turkey legs there. We can try that." They strolled through the sea of people when he clasped his hand around hers. A warmth welled up in her chest, and she couldn't help but glance up at him. Was he happy to see her, just as much as she was to see him? Evelyn had no idea what her brother was doing as they strolled down the main walkway. After all, the last time she had seen him was back in the afternoon. What she didn't know was that he had left the fair. He wanted to run after her, but he decided against it. He couldn't lose control as he did back at the apartment. If he lost control and hurt her, he'd only blame himself in the end. Even then, his heart was in pain right now. He clenched his fists and lowered his head, trying his best not to rip the hair from his head. "Fuck!" he screamed, punching the wall beside him. He hated this. Hated how he had to hide in this brotherly identity when they weren't even siblings. She'd pushed him away at the end and got rid of him, but he couldn't complain. Evelyn was innocent in this. From an outsider's perspective, she was just an older sister invested in finding the right girl for her brother. Mark sighed. But she shouldn't have done this. He had already said he wanted to be with Evelyn, and only her, though she probably didn't realize the truth of his words. Why did she have to make things more difficult? Why did she have to break his heart? "I especially wore this shirt for you," he murmured. It wasn't for those annoying women, but for her. Only her. He silently passed through the entrance and started down a long walking path. His face was expressionless. He had to calm himself down first. Ray was leaning against the car when he saw a familiar face coming out of the shadows. "You're early." He was about to comment more until he saw the dark look in his boss's eyes. Immediately, he switched his tone. "What happened? Did something go wrong?" "I'm fine," he responded roughly. "Just let me calm down in the car. I'll find my sister later." Without another word, he got into the vehicle and closed his eyes. He just needed some space to calm down, to suppress his restless mood. Otherwise, he'd do something stupid again. Tildy glanced at his retreating figure and nudged at Ray. "What happened?" "Beats me," he shrugged. "I just thought he'd be in a better mood after spending some time with his sister." After knowing him for so long, he already knew that his mood swings had something to do with his sister. While they were all sulking, Evelyn and Harvey were having the time of their lives. They were like little kids who had just discovered their first ever theme park. Together, they tried everything, playing a variety of games from skee-ball to a water gun game. Evelyn dragged him along with a smile plastered on her face. She even made him go into this crazy obstacle course and try on some old-fashioned costumes. "If you had a hat on, it'd be perfect," she murmured. "You would have looked like a sexy explorer." Harvey raised his eyebrows as he took a mask and placed it on her face. He hummed as if he was thinking, "This mask completes the look." "Jerk." She gritted her teeth. "You know what would fit your personality more? This woman's outfit." Evelyn lowered her head and carefully selected a more suitable outfit for herself. He glanced at the stall at the other end of the street with some interesting-looking jewelry pieces. There were dozens of couples and young women passing by that stall, all buying items. How could they sell so well? He murmured to himself as he stared at them curiously. What kind of business was that? What was their marketing strategy? The old woman stared up at the man's expensive suit and handsome face in black. Smiling, she motioned her hands to the various pieces laid out in cases. "You aren't knowledgeable about these things," she said simply. "How about this? I'll give you this set. You slip this end onto your finger and give this other looped end to someone you wish to tie yourself to. But you have to be careful. Once you've been tied together, you won't be able to remove it." He furrowed his eyebrows at the delicate silver piece. It looked pretty ordinary to him. "You can't remove it," he snorted. "While your marketing strategy is excellent, it's not the best story." "It's up to you whether you should believe it or not," the old lady shrugged. "Here, how about I give you one for free?" Harvey was in a good mood. Since the old lady wanted to give it to him, he really shouldn't refuse, right? He still didn't believe a word said by the woman. He walked back to Evelyn's side, looking up at him with curiosity. "I was just about to look for you," she blinked. "Where did you go? Anyway, how do I look? Do you think the mask fits well?" She turned side to side for him to get the full effect. "It looks decent, I guess." He stared at her for a long time. In reality, she looked beautiful. Her face became even more delicate under the red lighting, reflecting her sparkling eyes and plump lips. He turned away. Harvey glanced at the silver chain before looking up at her. He slid the first end around his fingers and tilted his head. "Give me your hand." "Huh?" She had no idea what was going on, but decided to follow suit. "What are you doing?" Harvey said nothing else as he stared at the little chain around his finger. Evelyn let her gaze fall on the jewelry piece, and she immediately held her breath. What was this? "Harvey!" Just as she was about to pull her hand back, he slipped and tied it around her finger. "The one selling it gave it to me for free," he shrugged. "She told me to use it." Her face turned bright red. "And do you know what that means? Did he know what the chain meant? Did he believe in these things? Would his arrogance allow him to accept it? If the chain really worked the way the old woman had claimed, what would happen when they take it off? Episode 50. Search for Evelyn. Evelyn somewhat knew that Harvey didn't know about the chain, given this was their first time in such a place. But a part of her wanted him to know exactly what it meant. Her heart skipped a beat as she waited for his response. "I don't know. The old lady only said that I won't be able to take it off." He rolled his eyes haughtily. "There isn't any scientific basis for this, so I'll just remove it now to prove her wrong." It was just an ordinary piece of jewelry, so why shouldn't he be able to remove it? The little expectation in her heart shattered, and her chest constricted. Evelyn lowered her head and stared at the piece that tied them together. While it looked ordinary, its meaning was much larger than just a piece of jewelry. Harvey had used it without knowing its actual meaning. Maybe she shouldn't have expected that much, and that is why she should always be on guard. She just didn't know how to resist him. He kept giving her so much hope, but she knew how this relationship would only end. Just as he was about to remove the chain binding them, she immediately pressed her hand against him. "Don't remove it," she blurted. An unfamiliar feeling rose in her chest. "You shouldn't do it." Why?
Evelyn pursed her lips. The piece is believed to ward off evil spirits. Since you tied it, you shouldn't remove it right away. She looked away. Else you'd be bringing disaster to us. Even if he didn't know the meaning behind this piece, she couldn't help but lie to him. Somehow a part of her still wanted to be connected to him, even if it meant believing in superstitions. Tying the silver chain meant they would never separate.
No wonder the woman said it couldn't be removed,
he murmured thoughtfully, staring at the jewelry.
I didn't know that there were people who believe in these ridiculous superstitions.
You may not believe it, but I do, okay? Let's just play it, to be safe, she replied quickly. Seeing her persistence, Harvey had no choice but to nod.
Fine, we'll just do this for the time being,
he finally said.
Tell me when we can take it off.
Okay. The woman who sold the jewelry watched as the young couple walked away. Foolish man, she whispered as a mysterious smile spread across her lips. Even if you're proud and unyielding, you can't escape her hold over you. Colorful lights hung all around them and glittered beautifully under the night sky, but Evelyn paid no attention to them at all. She could feel Harvey's warm hand around hers and the cold string tying them together. She had thought that Timothy was the greatest wrecking ball in her love life, that no other man could ever make her happy again after him. But now, she had another man in her life who was far more dangerous than any she had ever met. So many emotions bubbled up in her chest, but she couldn't bring herself to dissect them. She didn't want to overthink this tonight. Perhaps she should just cut off their relationship. After all, he'd leave her in the end. This was just taking care of it on her terms. What's wrong? The man finally turned to look at her. While his voice was neither gentle nor cold, she couldn't help but feel moved.
Are you hungry? Tired?
Not really. However, before she could finish her sentence, she had already caught sight of a familiar black shirt from afar. Her eyes widened in fear as she hurriedly grabbed Harvey's hand. Hurry and hide. I think I saw my brother. He tilted his head upward and glanced around as if not seeing what she did.
Where's your brother? Why should I hide from him?
He cocked an eyebrow at her.
I should meet him.
He's the handsome one at the center, she said quickly, forcing him to hide behind one of the stalls. And what are you talking about? I can't let him see you. Hide! His face contorted in disbelief.
Am I some sort of monster or something? Why can't I see him?
You're worse than a monster to him. Look, just hide. He shouldn't see you. She felt her hands trembling as she glanced back at her brother's tall figure. Crap, we're going to get caught. What should I do? What should I do? She thought back to Mark's furious gaze, and she could already feel herself quaking in fear. Even if she were his elder sister, she couldn't help but feel afraid of him. Not wanting to cause her more fear, Harvey agreed to her request this one time.
I'll help you out this time around,
he said reluctantly. What are you going to do? Ignoring the crowd, he rushed into the woods behind the two stalls. Mark walked down the main walkway before pursing his lips and turning around. However, the familiar black-haired woman had already disappeared from his line of sight. Tildy stopped beside him. What's wrong?
Nothing, he murmured. I thought I saw my sister, but I'm not sure. Let's keep walking.
As they walked around the fair, Mark and the others turned their heads from side to side, trying to locate her. At what seemed like their third round, Ray sighed in frustration.
Evelyn!
He called out in frustration.
Why couldn't you have brought your phone? It's so crowded around here.
Hearing his complaints, Mark scowled.
Are you an idiot? She just came to have a great night out. Of course she wouldn't be bringing a phone with her.
He was also so frustrated not able to locate his sister, but upon hearing them complain, he jumped the gun to defend her. Tildy was far more sensible. He knew that the man would be unhappy whenever someone was to bring up his sister, so he simply said nothing. Instead, he grabbed a few snacks and walked around the fair. Everything tasted so good. Perhaps looking for his boss's sister was the best decision he had made today. The three of them walked past Harvey and Evelyn, hidden behind some trees, without noticing them. The surrounding women ogled them, wanting nothing more than to distract the handsome men. Harvey carried Evelyn into the depths of the forest until they could no longer see her brother. Having a sigh of relief, she smiled. We can slow down. I can't see them anymore, she replied. We should find another way out, too, since we can't go out that way anymore.
Your shoes aren't suitable for walking on this road.
He raised his eyebrows. Ah, crap. Right. I'm wearing ballet slippers. She blinked in realization. But if I go back now, I might bump into them. Harvey slowly put her down as he bent over, totally hiding her from anyone who might come across them.
Don't you think this is better? Now that no one can see us, they wouldn't see what we're up to, he said.
Her face turned bright red as she sputtered out a few curses. What are you talking about? No one wants to do anything with you.
He was already so close to her, and she could feel her heart racing in her chest. She hurriedly turned around, not wanting him to know how badly he was affecting her, only to feel a painful pull from her finger. Ah! She groaned in pain. Don't move, he warned. We're still linked together. He held up his hand to reveal the silver chain tying them together. Even in total darkness, the silver shone under the moonlight. It was quite eye-catching, as if Cupid had tied it himself. It bound them together like they were lovers meant for eternity. But it was all an illusion. A bitter smile slipped onto Evelyn's face as the wind blew against them. She was an idiot. What was the point of tying them together? It wasn't as if they had a future or anything. Every minute and second she was with him, she felt like Cinderella. Once the clock struck, all the magic would disappear, and she'd be tossed back into her ordinary life. From having everything in the world, she'd soon have nothing. You can remove it now, she said calmly. Staring at her outstretched hand, he licked his thin lips as his eyes narrowed. Oh? Who says I'll be listening to you now? He smirked. Perhaps this chain is helpful after all. That way you can't be running away from me again. He didn't even give her a chance to speak as he kissed her. His hot lips burned fiercely against her skin as he took control. She couldn't help but stagger backward, leaning against a tree for support. The way he held her was gentle, yet this burning feeling bubbled up in her chest, growing larger by the second. If he continued. He slowly peppered a few kisses down her neck and she groaned. No, you can't leave a mark. Something inside her snapped, and she hurriedly pushed him away. She worried that if she ruined this outfit, Mark would ask questions. I have to go back. I didn't even bring a phone, so he'll be worried if I come back late. Harvey frowned. He's with a woman, isn't he? Don't be so worried about him. Only then did her eyes widen. No, Mark wasn't with the girls she had sent over. She didn't even see them standing around. All she saw were two men who looked extremely familiar, flanking him on either side. Crap, she said in surprise, drawing back. I have to go back now. I need to do something. I have to go. Those were his classmates, Ray and Tildy. The former had dinner with them at their home, while the latter was the psychology student. She remembered her brother saying that he would find a way to treat her. Perhaps this was the perfect time for it. Idiot, she murmured to herself. No, not this time. She had to go back. Glancing at the silver chain, she pulled it off her finger and let it drop. Hey, he frowned. Sorry, she said anxiously. It's urgent. Evelyn raced back to the stalls in a hurry without another word. Her shoes truly weren't suitable for this kind of ground, so her speed was much slower than she would have liked. Harvey frowned at her retreating figure. She left, just like that. Fine. She had something urgent to get to, so he let her go for the time being. Evelyn rushed to the main road of the fair as a panicked look spread across her face. Idiot, 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 she murmured to herself. Her brother must have been so worried about her, so he probably couldn't enjoy the fair as much as he would have liked. After looking around for what seemed like forever, she finally caught sight of his black clothing in the crowd. Mark! She called out. Mark was walking down the street when he heard someone calling his name. His heart immediately skipped a beat and his eyes widened. The fair was noisy, with old women screaming for discounts and young couples chattering with each other. Yet as soon as he heard this voice, he felt that all the noise had drowned out. He turned around. Evelyn stood in the middle of the busy streets as she struggled to see over all the milling heads. She waved her arms, trying to capture his attention. The white clothing she wore hugged her waist tightly, highlighting her gorgeous face and warm smile. Just the sight was enough to pull the strings of his heart. Was this what love felt like? When he saw her, it was like the world had stopped spinning. Everything froze, and it was just the two of them in the center of the fair. All he could hear was his throbbing heart and her sweet voice. There wasn't any need to confirm his feelings. This impulse was his feelings to hug her like there was no tomorrow. It was not an illusion or a fleeting feeling, but actual love. Only she could give him such happiness. Unable to shift his gaze away, Mark walked away from his two friends and headed straight toward Evelyn. Ray played with a mask when he saw his boss heading straight for the crowd. What's wrong? I don't know. Tildy was at a loss. There were so many people gathered around the stalls. Even if they squinted and looked, it would have been futile. This sea of people has easily swamped Evelyn's short figure. Yet Mark still spotted her. Seeing him walk over to her, she smiled up at him. Your hearing is good, she teased. You can hear me from even a mile away. It's because you called me. He nodded, staring at her with his chocolate brown eyes. However, even then, So many feelings rose to the surface for him. He wanted to hug her and never let her go. The other part of him wanted to question her and scold her for what she had just done, setting him up and leaving him alone. But as these feelings rose in his throat, he didn't know what to do. "The shirt looks great on you." If possible, his heart beat even louder. "Do you like it?" He reached out to hold her hand. "Of course." "That's good. That meant that he wasn't wearing it for nothing." "You look good too," Mark smiled as he pulled her down the street. "Come on, let's go for a stroll, okay? Ray and Tildy are at the other end." Evelyn nodded before glancing at the way he held her hand. "Mark, don't hold my hand. There are so many people here." He frowned. "What if you get lost?" As soon as they saw their boss and his sister nearing them, they smiled and greeted them with a hello. However, they couldn't help but gaze at their interlocked hands. While they said nothing, Ray couldn't help but sigh as he realized that this was definitely tight. Siblings at that age shouldn't be holding hands. Tildy, however, didn't care much. They walked together for a long time, so she could not ask him about what happened with those girls. As they talked, she couldn't help but look around. Harvey was nowhere to be seen. It was as if the man had disappeared with the night. Did he go home? Did he return to his hotel? She shouldn't worry about him, right? He should be able to handle himself. But what if Mark manages to find out Evelyn was with Harvey all this time? Things might take a sour turn.